Kingdom Hearts battle stances are weird. They've got dramatic flair, but are they practical? Honestly, I wouldn't have thought so, until I realized something important. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm not a master fencer, nor have I ever sparred with anyone, so who am I to pass judgment on my spiky-haired brethren? That realization sent me down a rabbit hole of historical combat arts where I discovered a treasure trove of stances and movements, each with its own unique utility. It made me wonder, what does it mean for someone to favor a particular stance? Why would a character default to a specific posture? In character design, even the smallest details can offer a glimpse into a character's mindset. So, what if we applied a historical lens to one of our favorite series? What might the battle stances of Kingdom Hearts characters reveal about their personalities and roles? That question has guided this series, and with each character examined, we've uncovered a lot of surprises. Let's run down them quickly for old time's sake. We began with Sora, the unshakable defender, whose stance aligns with Yahimai's longsword tail stance and the Wakigamai of Kenjutsu. Both reflect his defensive yet deceptively strong nature, daring foes to strike first so he can counter with overwhelming power. A testament to his role as the shield between danger and those he cares for. Next came Riku, the ambitious duelist, challenging the world through the High Ward, from Giacomo de Grassi's His True Art of Defense, a posture that prioritizes offense over passive defense. By holding his blade high and poised for a decisive thrust, Riku exerts constant pressure on his opponent, embodying his relentless ambition and refusal to yield. From Riku's relentless offense, we turned to Kairi, the aspiring guardian, whose stance mirrors Sora's, yet hinted at a style uniquely her own, originally resembling Yahimai's Fool's Guard or Kenjutsu's Geran no Kamae, a stance that emphasized deceptive counterattacks, fitting for someone stepping into her power after years of being protected. Instead, she now mirrors Sora, reflecting her bond as she carves out her own path forward. Roxas's stance, in contrast, was a furious display of loss and defiance. The dual-wielding Avenger. He follows historical dual-wielding practices by pairing a long weapon with a shorter one. Carrying two keyblades with symbolic weight, his combat style embodies his rage, his bond with Shion, and his quest for vengeance against those who manipulated them. And who could forget Axel, the blazing whirlwind? Whether wielding his chakrams with unconventional yet effective technique, or adopting the fluid, aggressive posture of Posta de Donna, his combat style is a perfect reflection of his fiery nature, unstoppable, ever burning, and always in motion. And then there was Shion, the defiant replica, a warrior who began as a reflection but became something far more. Though she inherited Sora's stance, her true identity emerges through movement. By mirroring Roxas's aggressive fighting style rather than Sora's defensive nature, she proves that she is more than just a copy. She is her own person, forged through bonds and defiance. Shifting focus to Terra, the bound resolve. His stance reflects the tension between stability and control. Rooted in Giacomo de Grassi's Low Ward, a foundational guard, it represents his desire for discipline to combat the darkness within, yet also hints at the internal battle threatening to undo it. While Terra struggled for control, Aqua, the disciplined Spellblade, embodied precision. A one-handed variation of Wakigamai manipulates her opponent's perception, while her grip allows for swift counterattacks, an elegant balance of strategy and structure, fitting for a Keyblade master striving to meet an unrelenting standard. And last but certainly not least, Ventus, the rebellious Swift Blade, prioritizes speed through his reverse grip, which allows for a faster draw, enabling him to strike quickly in close quarters, though at the cost of offensive range. This choice aligns with his role as the fastest of the trio, and serves a symbolic act of defiance against the norms placed on him, mirroring his struggle to prove himself against expectation. Look how much we've learned! I'm so proud of us, and I'm eager to see how we end. So, hear me out. Eraqus has an unyielding dedication to the light and a desire to shield the world. Hear me out. Eraqus' stance reflects the most fundamental form found in nearly all schools of Japanese swordsmanship. The back foot points to the left, the right foot leads, shoulders remain relaxed, and the blade is aimed directly at the enemy. This stance is optimal for adaptability, providing balance and readiness to transition seamlessly between offense and defense. I believe this iteration is the Shin no Seigen, from the Asayama Ichiden Ryu, where the blade is held up to the opponent's eyes rather than the chest. This subtle difference creates control over the opponent's movement by presenting a constant, direct threat, perfectly matching Eraqus' vigilant dogmatism. Eraqus, shaped by the tremendous loss he suffered as a teenager, clings tightly to the teachings of light, relying on these fundamentals to maintain control over his world, including his students. He is deeply rooted in past tragedies, and his stance, while seemingly adaptable, ironically reflects his rigidity. As the paragon of light meant to guide those lost in darkness, Eraqus remains unaware of the shadows he casts in the process. There's not much else to add here because this is the analysis I'm most confident in. I don't have any alternative interpretations to present, as I'm fairly certain this one is spot on. I recall someone in the comments mentioning that this stance does more than present a constant threat. It also disorients the opponent's perspective. Fascinated by this idea, I tried to look further into it, but there weren't many trustworthy sources. However, I did find something. A blog. Wait, I know, it's questionable, but stay with me here. On the website Classic Martial Arts Research Academy, I found a blog post titled Seigen no Kamae. This is the general title given for Seigen in most schools of Kenjutsu. The post was written by Dr. Kacem Zoughari, a researcher and practitioner of Japanese martial arts. He holds a PhD in Japanese history, has delivered numerous lectures on the subject, and is recognized for his in-depth studies of classical martial traditions. Although a blog post isn't the most academic of sources, the person writing it is enough for me to give this more credibility. Dr. Kacem writes how an opponent's sight is scrambled by the blade being pointed towards their eyes. It's as if the body is hidden behind the weapon, while the arms direct the blade's point. Finding a photo of it from the first-person perspective was also pretty difficult. But I did find a photo of Dr. Kacem doing it with a staff instead. It's the same principle regardless. As you can see, the angle makes measuring distance a bit of a challenge here, forcing the opponent to be more cautious, indirectly influencing their movements. This effect could contribute to controlling both physical and psychological distance between fighters. I believe this idea can be grounded in the broader practice of managing the opponent's focus and exploiting distance, which is a core tenet of any martial arts tradition. This is the stance Eraqus adopts, and I believe it reflects more than just technical skill. It reveals something about his character. By adopting a stance that embodies control and vigilance, Eraqus unconsciously mirrors his rigid worldview, where every move is calculated to maintain order and suppress chaos. Just as his blade disorients whoever it is pointed at, Eraqus' inflexible perspective similarly unsettles the students in his life. He keeps Ventus sheltered in the land of departure, afraid that exposing him to darkness will awaken something uncontrollable. He places the weight of responsibility on Aqua's shoulders, indirectly making her an enforcer of his ideals, even if it means standing against her friends. And most notably, his strict philosophy drives a wedge between him and Terra, pushing his student further toward the darkness Eraqus so desperately sought to prevent. But Eraqus is not simply a stubborn teacher. His fear is deeply personal. He witnessed firsthand the horrors of darkness, and he and Xehanort were the only survivors of their class. The others, their fellow students and friends, were lost at the hands of someone they once trusted, who succumbed to darkness in their grief. That betrayal left an enduring scar, shaping Eraqus' deep-seated anxiety, and leading him to adopt an unyielding stance against darkness. His swordplay seeks to command the battlefield, while his actions as a master aim to dictate the paths of those he mentors, further reflecting his struggle to move beyond the shadows of his own past. Mickey's, well, hear me out. He's a talking mouse wielding a sword taller than him, so I wasn't expecting proper swordsmanship. He shifts around while idle, usually holding his blade behind him, and he's an antsy little guy who spins through the air most of the time. Let's talk about spinning though. It's generally a bad idea. The sword should lead the body, not the other way around. Spinning puts your body at risk, moving toward the opponent before the sword does. Leaving the blade extended, like Mickey, slows you down and weakens your strike. To get more force, you'd have to rotate faster, pulling your arms in and extending them just before the attack to generate any power. For a typical swordsman, it's not a practical move for offense. But Mickey is a sorcerer sword mouse with one of the most overpowered weapons in fiction. Enemies will be left baffled at how effective these unconventional moves are, because Mickey, Donald, and Goofy are walking absurdities surrounded by a cast that takes itself way too seriously. Bow that Final Fantasy haircut before the king! I had fun with this one. Initially, I drew a blank when trying to figure this out, so I decided to turn the whole thing into a joke, fitting for the cartoon origins of our king. Trying to make sense of a rubber hose cartoon felt even more challenging than analyzing the rest of the cast, so I focused on one key aspect of Mickey's combat: spinning. The majority of his combo string is just spinning, whether on the ground or in the air. I mentioned before that spinning is generally a bad idea in combat, but allow me to elaborate. Spinning wasn't so taboo that it was never done historically. Robinswords highlights how long weapons like greatswords could incorporate spins to deal with multiple enemies at once. In those situations, your back is going to be turned to someone no matter what position you take, so spinning allowed you to shift focus while maintaining movement. Plus, the greatsword's mass could naturally carry you into a spin if you let it. Although Mickey carries a standard-sized keyblade, he's also just a little guy. So maybe all the spinning feels natural to him since his weapon is relatively large for his size. But the spinning I'm describing here isn't meant to resemble a Beyblade. Robin's sword demonstrates historical spin attacks that feature much more technique. There's a transition into a thrust, slight pauses to reposition, and the blade remains in constant motion, even when the body doesn't. This is even more apparent in a demonstration by Montante Niño. While I can't find much about this creator's credentials or activity anymore, their video speaks for itself. Both creators base their techniques on the 16 Simple Rules of the Montante by Diogo Gomes de Figueiredo, a Portuguese fencing master who codified the rules for the Montante, a large two-handed sword designed for crowd control. These techniques often include spins to reposition strategically, as they were created with the expectation of fighting multiple opponents at once. Although Kingdom Hearts characters frequently fight off waves of enemies, Mickey doesn't seem to spin strategically. Instead, he becomes a buzzsaw, spinning continuously regardless of context, which isn't the most advantageous approach in combat. But as I said in the original short, the king can do whatever he wants and still make it work. That's just the power of Disney. And that's everyone. The whole squad of Light and their respective historical swordsmanship. I can't possibly be forgetting anyone else. Except the dynamic duo, the Ride or Dies, Sora's Day Ones! Goofy's shield is a symbol of his unshakable role as the steadfast protector. Goofy leads with his shield, leaning into it with his legs spaced apart for stability. His bent forward posture suggests a proactive and defensive stance, ready to absorb impacts while remaining prepared to push forward or create openings. This perfectly aligns with Goofy's role as the tank of the group. He's always willing to take risks for others, leaning into danger to protect Sora and Donald. Goofy's shield is a standard round shield, a design with a long history of versatility. Scholagladiatoria enlightens us on the round shield's advantages that made it a universal design. Its circular shape provides excellent mobility and causes opponents' weapons to glance off its edge, reducing the likelihood of leaving one's guard open. Round shields were often paired with a weapon, creating what was arguably the most effective dual-wielding strategy in history. However, Goofy doesn't wield any additional weapon alongside his shield, no swords or other armaments. This suggests that Goofy prioritizes defense above all else. Or perhaps it's because Goofy himself is the real weapon. The man is a walking missile, capable of generating such immense centripetal force when he spins that he effectively becomes a tornado. This ability complements his role perfectly. Goofy is a knight, and his selfless bravery makes him the team's ultimate protector. Historically, shield bearers played a crucial role in guarding their allies and absorbing enemy strikes, as seen in formations like the Roman legionaries' tortoise formation, or the Greek phalanx. These strategies enabled soldiers to endure intense enemy assaults while advancing as a cohesive unit. As the team's shield bearer, Goofy embodies the backbone of any defensive formation. His choice of weapon reflects his steadfast loyalty and unwavering commitment to his team. Donald Duck is a wizard, so there's no historical fencing information for me to draw from here. Instead, let's focus on his weapon, the Mage's Staff, a tool through which he channels his magical power. Historically, objects like scepters and staffs have been powerful symbols of authority, control, and leadership across cultures. For example, the Sovereign Scepter with Cross, used in British coronations, represents the monarch's divine right and supreme authority. It's a physical manifestation of the ruler's sovereignty and role as the head of state. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, the Wa's scepter was a prominent symbol of the pharaoh's divine authority. Its design incorporated Egyptian imagery that conveyed power and the pharaoh's responsibility to maintain order, justice, and harmony in the land. Perhaps a more universally recognizable example is the staff of Asclepius. Associated with the Greek god of healing, this serpent-entwined rod has become synonymous with medicine and health, a symbol still used by healthcare organizations today. This connection is especially fitting for Donald because, as an observant Kingdom Hearts fan knows, Donald does heal you. All you have to do is set the right command in the menu. Donald slander will not be tolerated here. The imagery behind Donald's staff goes beyond mere functionality. Like the historical depictions of scepters wielded by monarchs and divine beings, it symbolizes both his magical prowess and his unwavering commitment to maintaining the natural order. Among this trio of goofballs, Donald stands out as the one who consistently reminds the group of their responsibility. He balances immense power with a deep sense of duty. Whether he's blasting enemies with spells or healing his allies in their time of need, Donald channels the legacy of these historical symbols of authority and care, solidifying his role as an indispensable figure in the fight against darkness. Okay, now that's a wrap on the Guardians of Light. Thank you so much for watching. I wanted to do more than just compile the shorts I've made, and I hope these videos delivered some fresh insights. If you enjoyed this form study compendium, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, my people, who's ready for some darkness?